on Sunday and take questions regarding that, expand on any questions that might come in. I've already received a number of emails throughout the week related to some of the questions that I knew we would have coming in. And so we'll also chat about those as well. To start everything off with, I think you need to know that CHSAA is planning on starting Season B as approved by the COVID response team in August. We're planning to start on January 4th. Nothing that has come out in the last, well, anytime this week has deterred that plan, and that's what we're going to. That's how we're going to proceed. We do know that right now things are touch and go for a lot of counties. When you check your email after this, you will see an email from Rhonda that went out at 8:58 with a statement from CDPHE that is allowing the CHSAA waiver to continue for counties in level orange. So that's good news for finishing out our season and finishing out our football season in Season A. Today, our agenda will be to kind of go through the memo as I noted. Please understand that when you have basketball questions, please address them to me or Lakin Cooper, my assistant. And the best way to relay those questions is to do it via email. I think that that will get a faster answer than a phone call. If there are questions regarding basketball officials, that needs to go to either myself or Tom Robinson. And again, emails are the best way to do that. Justin, I'm about having to get you off there because I'm trying too hard not to laugh at your tagline. Pete Scheck's assistant. Okay. Sorry. When you're sitting here on this dashboard and you're looking at everybody's faces and you're looking at everybody's names, and all of a sudden that pops up, kind of shakes you to the core, I think. When we're looking at the basketball calendar, I think we need to remind ourselves that the 1A, 2A, 3A schools will have 13 game season, regular season. The Class 4A, 5A schools will have a 14 game season. The question is, what's the difference there? Well, 1A, 2A, and 3A each have districts in their classification and ultimately will likely play a game or two more than the 4A, 5As because we have had to modify how many teams we are taking to the playoffs. So we were looking at trying to balance the schedules for everybody as best we could. The unique piece about basketball and those game schedules are when you have a boys and a girls teams and you have 14 games of each. Our season is roughly 35 days long on playing days before we get to the playoffs. And if you're playing a boys game on Monday and a girls game on Tuesday and you're alternating those games, that's 28 days right there that you can create some problems for yourself scheduling. And that's without scheduling any other sport that's going on in the winter. So there was some planning and there was some forethought put into the number of games that we are looking at. There will be no scrimmages or foundation games allowed. And in an effort to help with school facility scheduling, we've limited sub-varsity contests to 12 per level. As a reminder, practice starts January 4th. That's when you should have your formal tryouts. That's when you should be taking a look at your team. You, by bylaw, are prohibited from making any determinations for your team until the formal season begins. So you have January 4th, 5th, and 6th before we start games on January 7th. Schools will need to play a minimum of 9 games to qualify for the playoffs. For 1A, 2A, and 3A, that 9-game number is focused on through districts to qualify for playoffs. Okay, so your district games will count in that number. The end of the 1A, 2A, 3A regular season will be February 13th. The end of the regular season for 4A, 5A will be February 16th. Those districts need to be completed in 1A, 2A, and 3A by February 20th. And the classes 1A, 2A, 3A will have a 24-team bracket. And as we're going, I just saw a note that came through from Ernie. On there, we have sent out a YouTube link to all coaches through Max Preps so that they can watch this stream on YouTube. Additionally, if you have questions, please raise your hand so that we can acknowledge you on there. Ryan Casey is hopefully monitoring that so that I can see where everybody is. And if anybody has any questions at that particular point. And just bear with me, I'm trying to go there. Okay, so 1A, 2A regionals need to be completed by February 26th and 27th. Classes 4A and 5A will have 32 team brackets, and those game dates are listed in the memo. Those are February 19th, 20th, 23rd, 24th, with the grade 8 on the 26th, 27th. The state tournament will be the week of March 4th, 5th, and 6th. And as we get into how those games may have to be played, please note that every day, Monday through Saturday, may be needed to be used for districts on the week of districts and regionals in the week of regionals. And that, I think, is a critical note there, because we may be needing to go to home sites for our playoffs in order to meet capacity limitations, or even to allow some form of fans in our gyms as we move through our season. I've already heard from 1 or 2 schools that are considering not having teams this year, simply because of the restrictions that they believe that will be placed upon their programs by their local health agencies. Anybody that's not going to be playing in this season needs to notify CHSAA as soon as that decision is made. We're not anticipating any decisions being made on that until closer to that season. Everything that we're talking about today is what is accurate up to November 12th. CHSAA has submitted its variance requests for all winter sports, and it is for all winter sports, and we are expecting a response from the COVID response team in the governor's office sometime around the 1st of December. Among the basketball variance requests are optional mask wearing and size of rosters. We would like to see roster sizes expanded to 15 per level to get more kids involved. Also to give you a little bit more flexibility. If you feel like you can't run 4 levels, but you can run 3 levels and you can have 15 at each level, and that keeps your numbers fairly high. Things to anticipate in the 2021 basketball season. Masks will be mandated for everyone. Players, coaches, officials, athletic trainers, table workers, fans, if they're allowed, everyone. My suggestion is to have your coaches plan their practices now for all players, including those that are playing on the floor, to be masked. If that mandate changes, we'll let you know as quickly as we can. And that's usually within 24 hours of us being notified. All of the CHSAA safety recommendations and requirements for all sports can be found on our CHSAA website, chsanow.com. CHSAA will be adding an additional 30-second timeout in each quarter that we will call a mask break. But there are limitations on that. That will come around whatever the first dead ball whistle is at around the 4-minute mark. Players will then have to socially distance from each other across the floor, and they may take their masks off for 30 seconds to regain their composure. This is not and will not be used as a coaching timeout. There should be no coach-player contact during this mask timeout. It's a 30-second piece, and it's for the players that are on the floor. Additionally, we will add a minute in between quarters from 1 minute to 2 minutes in an effort to provide the same relief. That can be done at the bench. Capacity limits are going to be determined by your local or county jurisdiction unless a statewide mandate is made through the COVID response team. And they're going to be subject to the restrictions of each of those jurisdictions that they have placed on any of your public places. The number of gyms that may be run simultaneously is an issue that needs to be addressed by the school and its health department as part of the capacity limits.
Hey, Bert, we have a couple questions.
If you have 2 gyms and you have a number of entries and exits, and you can put together a plan that your health department approves, then you can be running 2 games at one time. You could be running 4 games somehow during that evening.
Bert?
But that's going to have to be a conversation that you and your health jurisdiction have. Current roster limits are set at 12 players per team. Should that change through the variance, we'll let you know. But until then, current regulations are going to be limiting us to 12 per team. Again, we've made a request.
Hey, Bert.
On that.
Bert, can you hear me?
We will adjust our bylaws and numbers of quarters to the number of games, and we will send that to you in a guidance document from this office about on or about December 14th. That's after we get our variance notifications. That's after we get a few other kinds of things that are going on. And things that will be in that guidance document will be the coach's responsibility to ensure that their kids are meeting the mask requirements while on the floor. The school's responsibility for notification of officials for entry, exit, all the protocols that they need to have coming in. I can't hear you, Ryan.
Okay. Well, I don't know how I'm gonna ask you questions then.
I think you muted yourself completely, and so that you didn't have to have those. And I think
it's actually your audio because other people are telling
cannot
me.
see. I'll get my chat up and see where we are. Jeremy Kearns asked, are players allowed to grab a water to drink as they are spaced out on the court? That's not the intention of the timeout. But if you can do it without anybody else entering the floor, yes. I'm just, and from Michael Hawks, what happens? What are the consequences of a coach talking to the player during the 30-second timeout? Guys, it's all about integrity and all about following what we've asked you to do. Essentially, that coach is then taking advantage to get us another timeout or another 4 timeouts in his game. We're asking it to be no player coach contact. It's simply there as a break for the players so that they can participate with their masks on. Scott Goheen, is the additional minute between quarters masked or unmasked? That can be unmasked. Amy Miller said they have students exempted from mask wearing for medical reasons via note from their doctor. CHSAA accepts only those that meet the restrictions as outlined by federal and state handicapping conditions. How do we expect students to be able to keep a mask on while running, jumping, playing in a physical game? Will officials stop play when masks fall down or fall off? There may be a time when they have to stop the game because when a mask falls off and on the floor, it becomes a tripping hazard or a sliding hazard. But in that event, it's still the coach's responsibility to ensure that those kids are playing. So the coach is going to have to be diligent in reminding the kids to keep those masks up. And you're going to need to, I put it in the link at the start of the meeting, links to some of those folks that are offering athletic masks that are designed to stay on during play. I will send those links out as an all school email later this week. Under the state mandates, you will have to social distance on your benches as well. So you're going to need to figure out how you're going to have that separation determined on your benches. You can use 2 and 3 levels of benches if you need to. The masks need to be worn as intended. That means if they need to be designed to cover the nose and the mouth and need to be worn as intended. We are not asking our officials to give technical fouls for failure to wear masks, but they can stop a game to ensure that people get back into alignment with their masks. Every question that I've taken this week has been about masks and basketball. We understand the issues with masks, okay? We understand the challenges that masks bring. But I will tell you that may be the only way we will be able to play basketball this year is with masks on. We have asked for a variance to get away from that. That has not been granted. Given the way that the numbers are trending, I'm not sure they will accept that variance request. We can keep our fingers crossed, but I'm not anticipating that that's what will happen. And in regard to masks, they need to be school approved and they need to be appropriate masks. And by appropriate masks, I mean they should not have any design other than a logo or school colors or something along those lines. We are not asking you to adhere to the color rules that we would for headbands and others for this mask situation, because we know that some schools are going to require their kids to purchase their own masks. We don't want to make the hardship of mask wearing any greater by demanding that they all be the same color, that they all be uniform, that they all be this, or they all be that. But they have to be worn as they are intended to be worn, and they need to cover the mouth and the nose. Luke DeWolf, will officials receive all the same training on enforcement of mask rules, timeouts, etc.? And it needs to be uniform and clear throughout the state. And yes, Luke, that is one of the challenges. Eric Johnson, I know, is on the call today, and he's president of the Basketball Officials Association. And we have been having this conversation from the very beginning of, I think, sometime in August. Joe Garmatz, also executive secretary, is on there as well.
Ryan?
I can hear you, Lakin. Bert, can you hear either of us?
Let's see. Let's just get to some of the questions that I've already gotten on. Oh, and by the way, this meeting is being recorded on the YouTube channel that CHSAA has. Correct, Ryan?
That's correct.
Even though I can't hear you. Okay. Sorry, I've gotten a number of emails regarding that. So sorry, I'm going to pull some of these. We've addressed masks and colors. We've addressed the fact that a note from a doctor is not necessarily exempt a player from it. They have to meet federal and state handicapping conditions. That note is in the CHSAA information that's on CHSAA now. If playing an out-of-state team that doesn't mandate the wearing of masks, how will that be handled? If they're playing in Colorado and we have to have masks on, that team will have to have masks. If you are traveling out of state and there's no mandate for mask wearing, that is up to you and your school district how that will be handled. Ron Sukol asks, is there a contingency plan if the response team does not approve the sports for the January start? Well, first of all, Ron, they have already approved that season. Now, if they tell us we can't start on January 4th, then we will be looking at various options, some of which may mean that we will shorten a season. Others may mean that we push everything all the way back until we can get started. But right now, we're not at that point. They have approved that season, and there has been no conversation of not allowing it to go forward. Net gaiters as masks are okay as long as they stay up, but I have an issue. I think most of us that have worn those at times know that they any little bit of movement and they drop. And so I think you need to consider the likelihood of neck gaiters dropping a lot more and your kids being more consumed by having to keep them up than maybe going to a different style of mask. And as we're talking a little bit about scheduling and some of those kinds of things, out-of-state contests in some sports have been not allowed. But in basketball, there are so many teams that depend upon teams from out of state, particularly our border schools, that we felt like we just have to do that. We are not, CHSAA will not be recommending a specific mask. That really needs to be you, your coaches, and your school's decision. Let's see if we received a question about wearing a face shield. Face shields for officials and for and players can be allowed, but only if there is a mask underneath. Face shields are not as effective in the situation that we're discussing as we would hope they could be. Any other questions regarding masks? I'd like to move on from that particular topic. I know it's going to dominate our world for a while, but this is a situation. I will Jose, I will get with our SMAC committee and see if they have a recommended mask that they are looking at. But to date, I have not seen that. Yes, we did talk a little bit about spectators. That's going to be local decisions by your local health agency, what your capacity limits will be, who will be allowed, how we are going to take care of those kinds of things. Greg King is asking, what are we going to do about the lack of officials due to mask requirements? Joe Garmatz, you assigned in the metro area. Can you jump on and maybe help us out here?
Yes, right now in the Denver area, I can speak for the Denver area. We're on the verge of having just enough officials. The ones that are opting out would have opted out for a variety of other reasons. It's going to be an ongoing process to see how many officials we have and what it'll cause. I'm optimistic that the officials, once they get used to using and wearing a mask, they will. We've had a couple of them say 60, 90 days ago that they would not wear a mask, but have since done some recreation in ball, some adult ball with masks on, and they've changed their mind and decided to help out with the wearing a mask. So I'm cautiously optimistic for the Denver metro area. I can't speak to the northern area or the southern, and I think the western slope has always been in a position that they're going to have enough officials.
Joe, Bert might have dropped out to try to get back in to see if he can get the audio. So
yeah, that was it. And I'm sorry, Joe, I missed your conversation piece.
Basically, I'm optimistic for Denver. I can't speak for the northern or the southern area, and I think the western slope is going to be okay too. There'll be some different things that we do, though. We will try to be a little bit more creative and try to give the officials a little bit more freedom as to when they show up and when they leave and how they arrive and how they leave. There'll be a ton of communication between the official and you, the athletic director, prior to that game. So a lot of those new things you'll hear about sooner than later.
Thanks, Joe.
You bet.
Josh Lake says, can home sites prohibit spectators even if local government allows it? Absolutely, Josh. If you feel like it's safer without that, yes.
Bert, if you can hear me, I can help moderate some of this.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. I can hear you now.
Good. Let's see here. Can you confirm is going to remain 2 teams that qualify per district in 3A, or is it going to be 1 as previously mentioned since there are only 24 teams qualified?
We will get to those here in a few minutes when we get into this. Let's get through some of the dynamics of this regular season, and we'll get into the individual classification playoffs. I see Chris Packer says their survey in Area 10 suggests that they could lose many officials. Hopefully that improves over time. And I think in some areas, I've been having various meetings with officials groups talking about various masks that they might use, various things that they can use so that they can be more comfortable on the court. And part of that conversation revolves around masks with pouches for whistles. And really it's that piece with the with the droplets that come out of the whistles that concerned most people related to the officials piece with that. Joe Garmatz, I know that we had a number of officials working some club in the metro area that have had to be masked at all times. Have you heard any feedback on that?
Yeah, that's what when you signed out there for just a few minutes, we have numerous officials here in the Denver area that 30, 40 days ago, 45 days ago would have said, no, I don't want to wear a mask. But as they go out and they work club ball and men's rec or any kind of rec ball that's out there, Gold Crown, they're wearing masks. They're required to, and they're adapting. So with the additional timeouts, the length of the time between quarters, I think our officials will learn to adapt. We're going to ask them. We meet with them again on Sunday night, and we're going to ask them to start working out with masks on, just like you would be getting in shape for the regular season. So when you do your runs or your bike or your exercising, wear a mask and get used to it. There's tons of products out there for officials, and there's one or two that are working really well. So we'll continue to push this to the officials and see if we can get it done.
Thank you, Joe. And apologies to Kelly, not Chris. Kelly, thanks.
There are some questions on season dates. Can you just reiterate again the start date of the season?
Start date of the season will be January 4th. That's the formal date the season begins. And it will, that is the time that your teams can be determined at that particular point.
Are they okay to do voluntary workouts during the Christmas break?
Absolutely. That the Christmas rule remains in effect, the winter prohibition. And this year you have the 28th, 29th, 30th, and 31st all available to you, which in most years you have some things split up by Sundays or otherwise. So you do have the Christmas voluntary practice. And folks, reminder, it is voluntary. Okay. That's not your tryouts. That's voluntary practice.
While we're on dates, there's been a couple of questions about end of regular season. Is there any consideration to expanding the end of the regular season to allow for makeup dates, and why or why not?
There isn't, because we know that we're going to have cancellations throughout the season. We're just going to have to deal with that. It's what has happened with football. It's what happened in softball. We have a limited calendar, and that's what's been approved, and that's what we're going to work for.
And can you
work towards?
Speak again to the reduction of the games for basketball?
Okay, 1A, 2A, 3A regular season is 13 games. 4A, 5A is 14 games. 1A, 2A, 3A in their playoff format have districts. So those games that perception that 1A, 2A, 3A aren't getting as many games as the 4A, 5A is inaccurate, because each of those teams gets to move on into a layer of playoffs that the 4A, 5A do not have.
How can they navigate local government mandates that restrict gatherings with representation to no more than 2 families?
Vicky, I saw that from Vicky, and Vicky, that's a tough question. Working with your local health jurisdiction, the best thing that you can do is offer them a plan that shows how you are limiting exposure every time people get together.
And here, sorry, if you scroll down a little bit, Mike Prusnowski had a good point. The gathering requirement you're talking about is for private gatherings, not for school functions. Another question, Bert. How is the water break coaching instruction being recommended during timeouts? How to social distance, drink water, get instruction?
Say that, I'm sorry, where are we at?
During timeouts.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Mhm.
We have to do our best to keep social distance as much as possible. The reality is that your timeouts and your water breaks, you can reasonably social distance and have those timeouts if you utilize, if you go to maybe farther towards the end of your bench so that your opposing coaches aren't hearing what you're telling your kids to do.
If a
But if
team,
there's somebody else out there that has some suggestions on that, I'd love to have you share that. Some of this is going to have to be some of the best practices, and the guidance piece that we would like to put out would have some of those best practices in there. So if you have had some conversations with your coaches about what they're doing if they're playing in the club season and how they're handling it there, that would be great. Just get that information to me so that we can share that with the rest of the state.
from Steve Latuda, if a team has 8 games once they are eliminated from districts, can they find a 9th game if there's still time? Essentially what we're doing with football in week 7.
Correct. They can do that. Absolutely.
What about locker rooms, Bert?
Locker rooms, again, are going to be subject to your local jurisdiction and what they're going to allow you to do.
And I'm going to take this one, if it's okay for you, from Josh Lake. Yeah. What happens if a team needs to quarantine, forfeit, or no contest? That's a no contest. That's consistent with what we've done in every other sport. Please let me and Bert know immediately. That way we can take care of it on max preps, so on and so forth. And we also will have a running list of teams looking for games. Another one, Bert. Some of our gyms do not have bleachers on the bench side, and there's no room for multiple rows of bench seats. Can we extend the bench to reach from the end of the line to the scorer's table in order to socially distance?
Absolutely. You in this day, in the day of pandemic, we have to be flexible in what we can do to help our team's social distance.
In question from Tom Brisky about keeping tabs of games. Yes, Tom, we will create a document similar to that where teams are going to be able to find games. It's just about if there's a quarantine game in football, we kept a running list so people were able to. We will set something similar up. Have 1A, 2A, and 3A districts been changed to a single elimination playoff format?
Each individual district is allowed to determine what they want to do in their district. Our recommendation is that they go to single elimination, and nearly all of them have.
Can we mandate that the 30-second mass breaks also allow water and trainer access?
Absolutely. I think that's a fair and reasonable piece in there. But remember, it's only 30 seconds, guys.
Would it be possible in rural counties where the virus is not out of control for local health departments to allow masks not to be worn on the court?
Depends on what we get from the state and how how we're going to answer that one. So we're going to put that question on hold.
What is the mandatory practices for basketball? I'm thinking that's a minimum.
Yeah, it's minimum practices are 3.
So during the mass break, Bert, is it only for the players that just came off the floor, or can all players do it?
Just for those that are on the floor is what that's intended to do. It's intended to help the kids that are playing.
Why are people, if everyone's required to wear a mask, why do we have to socially distance?
That's just part of the safety procedures that we have put in place as an association to ensure that we are doing all that we can to eliminate potential exposure.
Are teams allowed to switch the site of the game if one site host is allowing fans and the other site is not?
You guys are in control of your schedule. And if you wish to flip-flop, that's entirely up to you.
Okay. I'm going to turn to YouTube for some questions from coaches, Bert.
Okay.
Just to be clear, is December 28th an eligible day for open gyms and not part of the CHSAA winter blackout dates?
Our winter blackout date are December 24th through 27th and January 1. And in any other year, there might very well be a Sunday that would be in there that you would not be allowed to have voluntary practices. But you can start to have voluntary practices on the 28th.
Coaches are asking just for a better understanding of why the games were reduced in basketball.
Do the math, guys. If you have a 35-day season and you're playing your boys' games on Monday, your girls' games on another day, you have just taken up 28 days of a 35-day season. If you have other sports in your school, you still have to have access to gymnasiums for wrestling meets and those kinds of things. And that is part of what the decision that went into that was. Secondarily, we've modified the season, so we have modified the number of games by the same percentage in every sport except for golf.
Okay, Bert, I think we're caught up on questions.
Okay. Remember that we are now in the moratorium with all exceptions for our sports except for football. And during the moratorium out of season, that's how you have to look at it. The team may participate voluntarily in open gyms and informal workouts in which a CHSAA registered coach or volunteer is in attendance. We've had some questions about a CHSAA registered coach being involved in that. Remember, when your coaches register, in most cases, they're registering for a full year. And so if you have a new coach that's coming in, get them started on that registration process so that they can be considered a registered coach on that. We're trying to help schools protect themselves and coaches and make sure that we have the appropriate people supervising our kids. CHSAA has a bylaw that appears in 2 spots. It says that you cannot make an off-season workout mandatory as a condition of making your team. So please remember that those open gyms and voluntary workouts cannot be a condition for making a team once the formal season commences. And you are not required to start your first game on January 7th if you want to postpone because you want to spend a little more time with your selection process. That is entirely up to you and your coaches. No games, scrimmages, or contact with other recognized school teams may take place prior to January 4th. And this is a good time to talk a little bit about club versus school teams, okay? If you are telling me that you have a club team or your coach is participating with his kids in a club team, you would need to show how that is fully separate from the school team. In many cases, that means that they have insurance for their participation that's separate from what the school is doing. They're not using school uniforms. Those types of things that show a clear separation between the school team and the club team. If you have individual and specific questions, email those to me. I see Paul Kane and Vicky Vaughn have indicated that there are some challenges right now in El Paso County and Mesa County. Hopefully we get those squared away before January 4th so we can get more activity going with that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the individual playoff formats. On that, and we'll go by classification. So just bear with us if your classification isn't being discussed at this particular point. But in 1A will have a 24-team regional format. They will start with district playoffs, and the 8 districts will qualify 3 to the super regional for a total of 24 teams. We are advising that districts examine the home site concept unless a lot of those restrictions are lifted, so that you can, one, have a home, have people in attendance at those games, and just be aware of your local and county health jurisdictions about large gatherings. In all playoffs, and particularly in all districts and regional playoffs, we are recommending that all of them be at home sites, those games. That may mean a little bit more travel, but it does give a little bit more flexibility for fans perhaps to attend. We discovered that in softball, that you can, if you took a gate or something along those lines, you could pay for some of the expenses that come through with that travel and with the officials, and then getting some folks into your gym. The only note that I want to make on the 1A at this particular point is that the seating committee may adjust the pairings for geographical considerations this year. Your regions will be seated via a new 4 data point process. And Ryan, would you jump in and talk a little bit about the 4 data points?
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to review the bulletin because my mind's on football right now, Bert. But I think we actually might only be using 3 in basketball. But
well, that's on 4A and 5A.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we use the RPI, which you are all familiar with, as well as the Max Preps rankings. We use Packard in 1A through 3A. And then we use a coaches poll in 1A through 5A. There is a minimum that coaches will have to vote in order to vote prior to the postseason. I would strongly encourage everyone to have their coach sign up, because we've had a lot of instances in football where coaches signed up at the midway point of the season, and there's no way they can meet the minimum because there's not enough votes left. The other thing that we ask is if your coach signs up to vote, please ensure they actually vote through the entire season. Once again, in football, we've had some coaches, as soon as their team's out of contention, they will just stop voting. We will throw, and Dominic, I'll put that list in chat so everyone can see it. But we will send an invite to coaches to sign up in December. but then we combine all the 4 data points, and if you want to see how that's done, we just put an explainer up about how we do it in football, and it'll be done the same way in basketball.
And just as a reminder, that's only for 1A, Ryan.
Thank you, Bert.
2A and 3A have their own individual seeding processes, and then 4A and 5A use 3 data points, max preps, RPI, and the coaches poll. Right, Jason? Yep. Jason just said yes. So if you have any questions regarding the basketball playoff format in 1A, it is a new format, and we really wanted it to start this year, and so we are starting it, and that is the only class that will not have any of their playoff regional games numbers cut back on. 2A, we're going to cut back to 24 qualifying to regionals out of districts, and then 3A really is going to go to 24 as well, but there'll be no changes in the requirements on the seeding for 3A. And then in 4A and 5A, we just talked about the 3 data points, and there will only be 32 teams that will advance in 4A and 5A this year. Remember, all of these modifications in playoff formats are only for this year. They will return if we're able to go back to a normal schedule next year. They will return to the normal format that was approved by the Legislative Council last May. Do we have some more questions there, Ryan?
Just questions about the coaches voting, but I've just answered those in chat.
Okay. Let's see here. Can club teams scrimmage other club teams? CHSAA rules don't apply to club teams. The only CHSAA rule that applies to club would be to your club coaches, and they cannot coach on Sunday during this time.
We do have questions on YouTube, Bert.
Okay.
If COVID numbers continue to rise, is there like a date? Do we have a date where we would say that we're not playing anymore, or can you speak to that hypothetical?
Yeah. Well, I don't like the hypothetical there because that sounds awfully darn negative. Sounds like I was on my press conference yesterday with the media on the football one about how negative everything is. But right now, no, we will do everything in our power to get a season in some form.
And then another question, Bert, we have is when will the bulletin be made available?
Bulletin should be up shortly after we receive word back from the governor's COVID response team. So that should be, I'm hoping that they get it to us in advance of December 1st so that we can get something up by December 1st. But please don't hold us to that. As you know, the governor's COVID response team deals not only with us, but with every other aspect of business in Colorado. So sometimes they keep pushing us back a little bit, but we anticipate knowing around November 1st. So we will send an email to all schools when those bulletins are posted.
What about, has there been any talk of allowing Sunday contact during the season?
I'm sorry, say that?
Sunday contact.
Oh, Sunday contact during the season. That's part of a questionnaire, Ryan, that didn't you send out a questionnaire, or why don't you let us know what that entailed?
In the meantime, while I pull that up, see if there's any other questions. I'm being told by my district leadership that under level 3 that no open gyms can happen. Has anyone heard directly from the health department on this?
I have not, Cameron, but I'm guessing that your district leadership has been in contact with the health department to make some of those decisions on that. And that is what we have heard in some county jurisdictions. All high school activity, indoor activity, open gym type activities has been told to cease.
So Bert, I have the Sunday contact stuff here.
Okay.
We asked 2 questions. One of them was, would you allow Sunday contact for practice and competitions? 67% said no. The second question is, would you support coaches being able to coach high school athletes in this club setting on a Sunday? 50.7% said no. And this is with 298 responses.
Thank you. I do not anticipate that happening, but I do know that there is there's that conversation on Sunday it continues at certain levels, but as far as reaching the CHSAA office or the CHSAA board of directors, it hasn't gotten to us. Any additional questions there, Ryan?
There's a specific question to Aurora Public Schools, but has APS been able to work out indoors? That
I don't know. Ed, I don't know the answer to that one. You would have to contact one of the Aurora schools.
And Marcy asked me to put those numbers in the chat. So Marcy, I'm going to do that again, but I can just repeat them real quick. 67% no on competition on Sunday, 50.7% no on coaching in a club setting on Sunday.
John Sullivan said APS is not currently allowed to work out indoors. Thanks, John. Appreciate you jumping in. Again, basketball related questions to Lakin Cooper, Bert Borgmann, or Tom Robinson in the office. Coaches poll questions, please contact Ryan directly or have your coach contact Ryan directly, and let's get them signed up early to participate in that, because it becomes truly becomes a critical part of the seeding process. And I'm kind of excited to see how that works this year, even if we're in a strange year. That makes some sense. And Vince, I'm gonna answer your question, because actually the amendment came from your league, but it says, why not the additional metric of using the Packard system for 4A and 5A? And Jason, Jason Wilkins, I think that we determined that when you were putting that amendment together, that the Packard system and the Max Prep system were very similar in the items that they were weighing, and that's why you guys chose Max Preps over the Packard for a 3-prong system.
Thanks, Bert, for answering. Appreciate it.
And again, I'm getting actual emails now about the coaches poll. We will send out invites to the coaches poll in December. And Vince, your question about Packard, I believe Bert, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Legislative Council voted just to use RPI coaches poll in Max Preps and not.
Right. Yeah, we were just talking about that one, Ryan, while you were typing. No problem. Yeah, it's because the similarities between Max Preps and the Packard poll were why that decision needed to go that way.
Let's see here from YouTube and coaches. Do coaches and players need to have their own water bottles?
That is a requirement that CHSAA put out for all sports at the beginning of the year. So yes. And again, CHSAA's mandates around a lot of those things are on CHSAA now. And you can go there and look at it, and they will also be included in the bulletin. Again, we will have we're going to have some guidelines document that we will get out to you around before December 14th. It will have best practices, and it will have anything else that comes up. Dave Smith, our rules interpreter, said that we need to keep the door open on rules that we may need to adopt, playing rules that we may need to adopt should situations arise prior to the start of the season. One of those that we're contemplating is going with a no jump ball. And just starting with visitors taking the ball out at the beginning of the game, and then starting the alternate possession arrow. That has not been approved. That has not been put into play. That's just a consideration, but that's the type of rule that we may need to look at. Other states are going to that right now, because their COVID response teams are telling us that the tight circle and the jump ball is creating too much exposure time.
Asking in chat if we can give some more detail on the playoff formats.
What classification?
I think each.
Well, coaches or athletic directors, please, you received an 8-page document from me that had all of the playoff formats outlined in detail. Please share those with your coaches. There's nothing, there's nothing new, and I'll send it back out again in an all school, just so that you have it and you can get to that. And we'll also try and send that through the and we'll try to send that also through Max Prep, so that you guys have all of that as well. Look for it at the early part of next week.
But I think you might have stopped after 1A detail, because we got a whole bunch of questions at that time.
Class 2A will have a 24-team regional playoff bracket. They will start with districts as they normally do. 3 teams from. Sorry, guys. Each district will qualify 2 teams to regional, with the remaining 8 teams determined by the next highest RPI scores. Then the district champions will be seeded 1 through 8 based on RPI and take the top 8 seeds. The remainder of the teams shall be seeded 9 through 24 by RPI, avoiding first-round district matchups. And districts 17 through 24 may be moved to accommodate geography if it benefits the entire bracket. The 8 regional winners will move on to the state tournament, and will use the higher seeded teams as home teams during the week of March 1 through 6. Local and county health jurisdictions will provide the best information on large gatherings. I will tell you this in every classification: plan for multiple days to allow for travel in both gender teams. After the final 8 teams have been determined, the teams will be reseeded based on based on the following: final RPI ranking, previous district matchups, head-to-head competition, and common opponents. In Class 3A, the districts will determine their own seeding. The seven districts, each qualifying 2 teams to the state bracket, with the remaining 10 teams determined by RPI. The RPI will run through districts. The qualifiers advance to a 24-team regional or state bracket where the district champions, if ranked in the top 16 of RPI plus the next highest RPI finisher, will be considered the top 8 seeds. The 7 district champions, if ranked in the top 16 of RPI and the first highest RPI qualifier, will be placed on the bracket in order of 1 through 8. A district champion not ranked in the top 16 of final RPI will be placed on the bracket, but will not be a top 8 seed and will not be considered a host for the region. If a district champion is not in the top 16 of RPI, then the next highest ranking RPI will host. The committee may use the following criteria to seed the final pairings: final RPI ranking, previous district matchups, head-to-head competition, and common opponents. Seeds 17 through 24 may be moved to accommodate geographical considerations. The bracket will not be reseeded going into the state tournament. The state tournament, the higher seeded teams as home teams during the week of March 1 through 6. Local and county health jurisdictions will provide the best information on large gatherings. Again, plan for multiple days. Right now, if we are going with the higher home seed through the Final Four, our plan is to have a large gymnasium, hopefully something like the Budweiser Event Center or something similar to that, to host the 10 championship games at one site on a Friday and Saturday, the 5th and the 6th of March. Right now, the Denver Coliseum, as we have been informed, will not be available because it is a shelter site and will remain a shelter site for several months. That would have been ideal because I think we could have worked with Denver Health to create some social distancing so that we could have larger crowds involved in that. If we cannot have fans in attendance at our state championship games, we will go to home sites for those. Okay. And guys, everything that we're talking about is what is happening on November 12th, 2020. As we know, it could change on November 12th. It could change on November 13th. And everything's out the window. But right now, these are the plans that we have in place. Class 4A. Playoffs. A total of 32 teams will qualify. The 11 league champions earn an automatic berth in the playoffs. If no 4A team wins the Southwestern League, the Northern Conference, and or the Pikes Peak outright, those teams will qualify through RPI. The Mullen girls team and Gateway girls teams will qualify through RPI. The remaining teams will be added based on RPI. Teams 25 through 32 may be moved to address any geographical concerns if it creates a better overall geographic situation for the bracket. Higher seeds will host in all games played at home sites. That's first round through Final Four, except as noted in the seeding process. Schools will be ranked by a combination of the CHSAA RPI ranking system, Max Prep, Freeman rankings, and 4A coaches poll, with each source being equally weighted. The committee will address any same league matchups by moving one of the teams up or down in the bracket. In Class 5A, a total of 32 teams will qualify. The 7 or 8, if the North Central or the Northern Conference League champion is a 5A team, will earn an automatic berth in the playoffs. If no 5A team wins the Northern Conference and or Pikes Peak outright, those teams will qualify through RPI. Fruita Monument, Palmer, and Pueblo West will qualify through RPI. The remaining teams will be added based on RPI. Teams 25 through 32 may be moved to address any geographical concerns if it creates a better overall geographic situation for this bracket. Higher seeds will host in all games played at home sites, first round through Final Four. Schools will be ranked by a combination of the CHSAA RPI ranking system, Max Prep, Freeman rankings, and 5A coaches poll, with each source being equally weighted. The remaining 24 qualifying teams will be placed on the bracket 17 through 32. The committee will address any same league matchups by moving one of the teams up or down in the bracket. All head coaches are required to vote 6 of 7 weeks in the online coaches poll during the regular season in order to vote for the final online coaches poll.
Or can you repeat what you said about the state tournament venue?
I'm sorry, which, yeah, I will do that in a second, okay? A minimum of 1 coach per league per classification is required to vote in order to ensure statewide representation. That's 5A. Okay, so state championship week, March 1 through 6. When we get to, when we've determined that we have 2 finalists in each classification per gender, we will hopefully be able to hold those games all at a single site. Okay. That doesn't necessarily mean we'll be able to all go in and watch all 5 games, but at least we may be able to hold all of those championship games at a single site, at a single location. That may mean we play 4 games on championship games on Friday and 6 on Saturday, or we play 5 on each day. That's still to be determined. Our hope is if we get to that situation and things are getting abated with this virus, that we are going to be allowed to have fans in attendance and we are able to accommodate some fans and recreate a state championship game situation. Barring that, we may go back to what it was like in 1921 and have to have a state championship game at a home site. But those determinations will change as we, my guess is that picture will change as we move closer to our season. If a miracle happens and we can hold our playoffs the way we've always held them, that would be great too. But right now, I'm not sure we can bet on miracles.
Hey, Bert, I had a question on the seeding index. And just to be clear, it is all equally weighted. They're all split evenly, whether it's 3 data sources or 4, it's all equally weighted.
Okay. Good question from Bernie. Is CHSAA's vision that the county regulations of the home team be followed when 2 teams play, or that team whose county has the most stringent measures be followed? It will be the home sites. You need to follow the home site restrictions.
All right, Bert, I'm not seeing any more questions.
Okay. All right, folks, I appreciate your attendance today. Thank you very much. Sean O'Donnell, who is chair of the basketball committee, was on the Zoom listening in as well. And as a reminder, our basketball committee meets on Monday at 9:30 virtually. One thing that you will need to know is that that will be probably the first of several meetings that the basketball committee will have to have as we start to get ready for next season and the next cycle, once decisions are made by the clock committee. All right.
Thanks, Bert.
You bet, guys. Ryan, I think we can shut down